Okay, so I like to garden. A little bit about myself is I like to garden. The lights, thank you. There we go. Thank you so much. So, yeah, now this is my old garden at our old house. We moved to the farm and built a house out there. So this is my old garden, and I do miss it. There's a side view of the old garden, and there's the wild daisies with the puppy dog, and he's not with us anymore. And there's me at our new house with some nice healthy tomatoes, and there's our two new doggies sitting in some pink yarrow. That's pink yarrow there. That's a perennial. There I'm building our new garden, and it was on a hill. So for one thing, it was on a hill, so I had to build up the back, and on the other thing, it was terrible, terrible soil because they took all the topsoil away. So luckily for me, I have a bunch of compost and vermicompost sitting around, so you can bet I just threw that in there. And that was my garden sometime during the summer last year. And there's, some nice healthy-looking plants. And I like this picture. This is not me, but this is a woman using a watering can. And it looks so peaceful, but then I got to thinking, I wonder what is in that watering can and if she has any chemicals in there. Because then, you got this guy, and you got this guy, and then you got this. And I've been promoting at some stores lately, and I can't believe the amount of people that buy, how many chemicals they buy. It's just, because 10 years ago that was me, but I've gotten away from it. So I was surprised to see that so many people were still using so many chemicals. And I've already had 2 people tell me this year that their neighbors' dogs got cancer. Throat cancer, because the neighbors had their yard sprayed, and then the dog goes out and licks his paws and dies. So today, I'm going to help you get away from all those dreaded chemicals. Because I don't use any chemicals on my garden. All I use is natural and the vermicompost. And I think one of the main reasons is because I can. It's that good. And the other reason is that's my product. So why would I want you to know what it can do. We'll start in, and so vermicompost. Vermi is Latin for worm. So vermicompost, and vermicompost is totally decayed organic matter and worm poop, or their castings. I don't know if you've ever noticed that sometimes vermicompost is called worm castings and it's interchangeable. And the way the industry is worm castings, are their poop. But if you screen it to less than 1/8 inch, the industry says that you can call it worm castings. So that is one of the differences. And I want to tell you how it's made. So the worm ingests partially decayed organic matter because their little mouths are very small. So it already has to be starting to decay, and it goes through their digestive system, and it gets crushed and fragmented, and all those wonderful juices get added to it, all the wonderful microbes, and then it gets a nice layer of mucus around it, and that mucus helps it to become a little bit insoluble. And you can see that's the worm's digestive system. So at my farm, at Divine Gardens, I do some things to make the vermicompost quality. We have a farmer that runs from us, and I use this cow and pig manure. And I get horse bedding. I mix it all together in this nice big old mixer. And from there's the aerated compost base that we had built just for this reason. You want to get the compost to over 131 degrees for at least 3 days to kill the weed seeds and pathogens. And then after that, I feed it to the worms. also, I'm going to start selling compost that's made from here. So it's going to be a nice natural compost. You can see there's the pipes in the back because there's a big blower that's hooked on. Oh, I got this thing. No, there. There's a big blower right there, and the blower goes and blows air up underneath. That's the purpose of that is you want the microbes inside the compost to stay aerobic. If they run out of oxygen, they change into those die, and the anaerobic microbes start to populate the compost. That's, for what I'm trying to do, that's bad. That's not going to make a good compost. So that's the reason why you want to keep the oxygen coming up. Hi, come on in. Don't worry. I'm sorry. I would have waited for you. It said that there were 3 people coming. There you go. Josh says, oh, he's got his dog with him? Oh, I love black labs. Yeah. Oh, nice, nice. Well, I'll just get you caught up since Josh had to leave the room. I'm Tina. I'm talking about my business and why I think Vermicompost is so wonderful. So first off, I pointed out that I like gardening, and then to help you get away from using man-made chemicals, this is an alternative. And now I'm showing you how I make it. Is he okay? Is she okay? Oh, good, good. She's probably beautiful. Okay, so the air pushes, the blowers push air up into the compost. And, good question. It is set to run, I think, every 20 minutes. It comes on for 1 minute. And it's nice because right here where the blower is, there's actually 4 pipes going over, but you can control how much air is going out to each bay. There's these things that push and pull in it. Actually, it'll block the bay off, so if there's nothing in the bays, you can just block it right off. And it also will help you to regulate how much air is going in. It's pretty neat. I got this company out in Washington State. It's called O2 Compost, and they design these people. And so that's how I got the idea to do it. See back again. That's what the front of it looks like again. Those bays they're 7 feet wide and they're about 12 feet deep, and they hold. If you can get it up to the top, they hold 25 yards. It's pretty hard for me with the tractor bucket I have to get it up that 6 feet, you know. And then by the time it's done composting, you lose almost half of the volume. And then actually, you lose another half of that volume by the time the worms get done processing it. So when you start off with, say, that bay right there, by the time the worms get done with it, they would reduce that down to 25%. We have a farmer who rents from us, and he has cows and pigs, so I use his manure and bedding. I get some local horse manure and bedding to add carbon to it to get that ratio right. I add vegetable scraps from our home, and we also have a neighbor who works in the office, and she'll bring me her shredded paper, which is nice because that means I have to truck in a little less horse manure. The animals at our farm they're not approved organic. They're not certified organic. The farmer that feeds them is natural. Some of his hay comes off of our property, and my property is no chemicals allowed. I have 70 acres, and then across the road, he cuts hay from there, And I know there's no chemicals on that. He does get his hay from another place. They don't put chemicals on that. So the hay doesn't have chemicals. He doesn't use very many chemicals. If a pig got sick or a cow got sick, he might give it some antibiotics, but he really doesn't. They're expensive for one reason, and that's not in the farmer's budget. So the stuff on my farm is very, very, I'm sorry, what? No. The corn he buys for the pigs is probably GMO fed. Yes, definitely. And then the horses are dewormed. And then I'm not quite sure about all the feed. If their feed could be some GMO too. Yeah. Well, if they weren't dewormed, it wouldn't be a problem for me. It would be fine for me. It would be a problem for the horses. And actually, a lot of my manure I'm getting from Morrisville State University. They board a lot of horses there. So if I was to get, they have to. I don't know why they have to, but they do. They deworm their horses, I guess, because of the scale they're at and just their business model for the college is that's what they do. I don't know if there's any local horse farms around that don't use any chemicals. It would be wonderful if I didn't have to. And as the years go by, I just came up with another idea for a source of carbon. But it's really hard to find that perfect feed source. I didn't know how hard it would be. I was getting some really nice horse bedding and manure from another farm that was near me, and then I realized that the straw was from out of state. Well, outside of New York State, in many of the states, you are allowed to use herbicide on straw. I can't have herbicides in my compost because it doesn't break down. So it's a tricky thing. Something to work toward. This is the best I can do at this time in my business. There's my worms. They live in bed in a pole barn. I think I have a picture of a pole barn down here. So they're in there, and there's the pole barn. So that's where they live, and there's a picture of the worms inside the bin. So these worms, they're surface feeders. I feed them on the top. I scrape it off the bottom of the bin. I don't insulate the plate. So what I did is I bought heat cables for that you would put underneath bedding plots, garden plots, and I stapled those to the edges all around the worm beds. They're about 2.5 rows. One side only has 2, and the rest of the sides have pretty much 3. And I have them controlled with a temperature thermometer gauge at 32 degrees is where they spent the winter months at. And what that did for me is they didn't die. It kept them in a state of kind of hibernation, so that they could start to bounce back earlier, and I wouldn't have a lot that did die. So there's 8 beds there, and there's 4 in the middle, right along there right now.
So you could climate control year-round. They actually year-round.
I've heard that some people say that they do something. They do kind of like a mating thing, maybe in August and in February or something. I've read that somewhere. But no, they will stay. If I could keep them active all year round, they would produce all year round. I can't keep them active all year round because the stuff on the bottom here, that's going to freeze. And so me trying to scrape it off the bottom, I can't do it. So the more I feed them, it's just going to keep going up and up. It's going to be a mess. It's better just to let them go and relax. And it's the same thing with the compost. So the winter of 2012 to 2013, when we had those compost bays built, I thought, well, I can just keep making it. Well, you can't, because what happens is, even though the microbes are keeping it warm inside, the edges freeze. And another thing is, I had a lot of ice buildup in front of those bays. Well, me driving the tractor and sliding, slamming into the concrete walls, it doesn't make sense. So I'm learning you don't fight the weather. You just got to go along with it.
So there's screen on the bottom. That's when the compost falls out?
Yeah, there's no. I did. What it is if you see right there and right there and right there and right there, there is steel going across from one side to the other. When I made these beds, you can see this little bit of paper here. When I made the beds, I laid down several sheets of craft paper, I believe it was called. And I just stapled them. And then I put the pre-composted manure down and the worms down. And so what happens is it packs down. Now that the paper's gone, it does not fall out on its own. Well, once in a while it will fall out, but it won't fall out. I have to scrape it. And even after it's scraped, this will stay up a couple inches where I scraped it. It takes a week or two for it to fall down, or I could get up there and stand on it and crush my worms, but I don't. This is so cool. I have a proprietary equipment because it was a dilemma. I had thought that we had both thought I could take a rake, and get under there. You're not doing that. I suppose if you were really strong and had a lot of energy, you could. It exhausted me after one bed, and so we kind of played around and figured out something. And it's still time extensive. They actually will make, there's companies that make, these are 4 by 8 feet. So there's a company that makes a 5 by 20 foot bed, which is roughly 100 square feet, just like these 3 of these are. To buy that 5 by 20 foot bed, and what it's got is it's got a conveyor belt underneath that automatically will, scrape it for you. It's $20,000. So we can't understand how you can be profitable spending that much money on 100 square feet. So we opted to do it the old-fashioned way. And if we were right. And if we were good at engineering and things like that, we might have been able to figure it out, but we are not. We're just, that's not how we are. You got to work within yourself. Oh, and this is my screener. So this is when the compost when I scrape it out, and then the screen is at 1/8 inch, and that's why I can put worm castings in parentheses. People attach a higher value to worm castings, and that's why I started putting the worm castings underneath. Even though it's still vermicompost, it's just screened to a different size. And those are the blue bins, and then from there I package it up. Okay. Is that good on how I make it? Do you have any more questions? Okay, so let's get into why vermicompost is so good. Well, the first and the biggest reason is because when it goes through the worm's digestive system, it gets filled with all those wonderful, diverse, beneficial microorganisms that no other compost will have. That's the first reason. It also gets low levels of micro and macronutrients. And you can see these are the ones I have it tested for, but there's even more. How are you? Would you like a handout? Okay, great. There you go. And I'm Tina. Do you work? Rachel? I'm Rachel. Okay. And I'm Tina, and I didn't get your name. You can Joyce. Okay, so Joyce. All right. So we'll move on a little bit. This one here, the plant growth hormones, this is huge. It's a scientific fact that microorganisms produce plant growth hormones. When they are produced in the process of vermicompost, instead of those hormones being soluble and leaching away quickly, they become adhered onto the vermicompost so that they are more unsoluble. They stay around a lot longer to benefit the plant. Yeah, it's really awesome. It's amazing. And then there's a lot of humic acids in vermicompost. There's humus in it because they do such a great job at totally decaying the organic matter. Those are the major reasons why vermicomposts are so good. Okay. Hi, how are you? So that's why it's so good, and now I want to talk about what it's going to do for your plants. Since you came back so quick, the plant growth hormones that are made during the vermicomposting process, they become insoluble instead of soluble. That's one of the great things about vermicompost. I didn't want you to miss that. So now we're going to talk about the benefits. One of the benefits is bigger plants. You can see this research was done at Ohio State University. This is the control, and this is with compost tea, vermicompost tea at 5, 10, 20%. So you can see the huge difference it made on these were tomato plants. Yes, June. Yes. Oh, yeah. No. When I say they become insoluble, I mean that they leach away much slower. The plant can still get at them, but it's not going to be gone after the first big rainstorm. Yeah. Yes, it is. There's also larger root systems. So these are the same plants, and when they took them out of the pots, you got your control, and you can see the bigger roots here. There's the compost tea versus the vermicompost tea. So you can see the difference between compost and worm compost. Yes, mycorrhizae. Actually, so it does help with that. You're going to buy some? You can. Yep, you can, or you could buy this. Actually, here's mine. So I grew these plants in my house. Potting soil. This is potting soil with that had fertilizer at it. This is potting soil with vermicompost. This is potting soil with fertilizer and vermicompost. So these were the biggest. Aren't they beautiful? And you think, oh, darn it, I'm going to use vermicompost with the commercial fertilizer. But at the end of the year, I took the plants out of the pot. This is the root system of the plant that was grown just with fertilizer. And this is the one that was grown with the vermicompost. I do not have the plant still that was grown with the vermicompost and the fertilizer. It would have been interesting to see what those roots did. But you can see the big root mass here. And these roots, they're the tiny filament ones that make me think they're mycorrhizals. And I have read that it does improve the mycorrhizal fungus in the soil. On the next page, these are carrots I pulled out last fall. Look at all the little roots on that carrot, and look at all the little roots in the ground where that carrot was grown. And so all those little roots are helping the plant to absorb the nutrients that are in the soil from the vermicompost and naturally, because vermicompost will help plants absorb the the nutrients that are just naturally in the soil. It's going to help you increase your yields. The plant's bigger, you're going to have more yields. Here's what they did is this is vermicompost, I believe. Okay, yep, it wasn't tea, it was straight vermicompost. There's 0%, 10, 20, 40. And you can see when you add too much, it actually goes down, and that's because one of the reasons is the plant growth hormones, it overstimulates it. It's not good for it. I always recommend 10% of my vermicompost. My vermicompost is really rich. If it's for flowers or light feeders, I recommend less. So a couple pictures from my garden. I was told that people want to see my pictures, so I have a lot here. Here's some beautiful tomatoes. These were Better Boys. Look at the size of them. And there's a couple right next to each other. Look at, and you're going to have more production, more productive. That beautiful bowl, and look at how beautiful those strawberries are. Healthier plants. Those are just some asparagus. Those are some beautiful snow peas tumbling over the fence line. Those are some green beans. And it's amazing how beautiful a healthy plant can be. There's some nice little cucumbers hanging off of a old piece of it. Yeah, it's a re-rod actually. Some of that re-rod stuff that used for cement, but it works. Okay. So here we go. These are the striped cucumber beetles. Do you recognize them? Okay. Vermicompost will help you fight pests. And in this case, we're going to talk about the striped cucumber beetles. So I had them all over my cantaloupe plants. Here's a chart where they did research on making tea and spraying it, and they found out that when you do tea, it helps to control the cucumber beetles. So if you see this is the water, 5%, 10%, 20% concentration of tea. But look at how the cucumber beetle population fell when they used the tea compared to there. So I tried it myself. Oh, geez, I got my screens mixed up. Well, we're going to just rush ahead because I want to find that. Ah, there we go. We're back. Oh, I know what I did. I'm sorry. We're going to talk about that later. Sorry, I know what I did. So, it also helps to control aphids. There's aphids all over that plant. They did research on that. This was Ohio State. There it is with 0% in of vermicompost is there. 20%, 40% to control the aphid population. So that works on aphids. It works on tobacco hornworms that they like your tomatoes. I don't know if you recognize that feller there. And there's the research on the tobacco hornworms. That would have been from Ohio State too. It looks like it's also been proven to control the cabbage, white caterpillar, the mealybug, the spider. Another thing is the squash vine borer. There's been no research that I have found about vermicompost and the squash vine borer, but last year I had on my pumpkins, them little rascals had got into a couple of my big pumpkin vines. So I took a handful of the vermicompost and put it right over the top of the frass, right over it, and that's all I had time for. I wish I had taken a picture. All I know is that those plants went on to be productive and make pumpkins this big. I wanted bigger pumpkins, but I'm not at that level. I don't know how to do it. But so I'm, next year, this coming year, I'll definitely be doing that again if I see any squash vine borers, raising havoc with my squash vines. Any questions up to this point? it might, and actually, definitely, the reason that they have found that in the case of the striped cucumber beetle, what happens is the plants uptake the tea or the vermicompost. They uptake the vermicompost, and those bugs don't like the way the plants taste anymore. Yeah, so that might be what happened here with the squash vine borer. And I don't know. I'd have to do more. You know, I'm not a researcher. I'm a gardener for fun. It's my hobby. I'm not a professional. Here's other diseases that they have done research and found that it had positive effects on preventing. Definitely the damping off, and you can read those. I don't want to read them all to you. I have not seen any really, really good research about the late blight. I've seen some anecdotals, but I never, so definitely it's something that I want to do in the years to come is make the tea and get it on my plants. I should have done it last year. Copper, yeah, but like I say, I am, Mrs. Vermicompost, so I can't use copper. I'm trying to figure out. This was done by Cornell, and they actually have a video. It's a great video, but this is how they believe that the pythium is helped to prevent them from attacking the seeds, and the zoospores. Basically, when the seed is then inoculated with the vermicompost, the little zoospores less are produced, but the ones that do, they can't find the seed or something, so they don't get into the seed to cause the disease. And that is video. I don't know if it's not in my brochure, but it's another benefit of vermicompost is, this is proven, plants, your vegetables will taste better, have more nutritional value, and more flavonoids, the anti-cancer fighting things. So they've done research. Some research has, the research that they have done, those people have found that yes. And you can see there's the little dish I made up this past summer. This is a carrot I grew. It was a pound. I took the carrot and I cleaned it off and I sliced it diagonally, like chips. And this huge carrot tasted like a baby carrot. The flavor was so sweet. Another very important thing is vermicompost is safe to reuse around your pets and your children. So your dog's out working in the garden with you, or your children are playing. You know what? Does it look like your dog? Not as cute though, right? Your own dog's always cuter. So your kid goes, and what's he do? He puts his hand in the container of vermicompost. You probably want to wash his hands, but you don't have to run into the house and wash them. You don't have to worry about calling 911. You don't have to worry about eating a little of it and getting poisoning and having his stomach pump. There's another picture. That was the same dog. He was helping me pick strawberries that day. That's why I like vermicompost. Those are the benefits. So now we'll talk about how to use it to get the most out of it. And one of the ways is to add it to your seed starting mix. I recommend 10%. What they did in this study is this was Tennessee Technological University. They took and they added vermicompost to coir, and vermiculite, and vermicompost to coir, and 30% vermiculite. And they had old seeds from 98, 99, and then the commercial seed. You can see that the starting mix that had the vermicompost added to it, all of the seeds germinated. No, not all the seeds germinated. More of the seeds germinated compared to the mix that did not have the vermicompost in it. Add 10% to your potting soil, or you can add 10% to old potting soil to rejuvenate it. So if you have your pot sitting around and you don't want to dump out your old potting soil, just add to it and, you know, save yourself some money. Here's a nice study that they did with, these are eggplants. Look at the difference it made in the potting soil to those eggplants. The control, the chemical fertilizer, the manure, and there's the vermicompost. And potted plants, I recommend 2 tablespoons per quart, but that's all dependent on how heavy a feeder it is. Yeah? Yes, I am. Yep, we're doing this, and then we're going to get into that. So there's your potted plants. When you're planting your seeds, you can sprinkle some in the furrow or right underneath the seeds. And 1/4 of a cup added underneath of a tomato, any plant, will help to alleviate transplant shock. But the thing is, you want to use the amount dependent on how hungry the plant is. So if your tomato plant is this big, you're going to need more. But if it's a lettuce plant, you're going to need less. And getting back to the potted plants, an African violet is a light feeder. It's just a little bit. That plant that's a not a rhododendron, but it's whatever. I can never think of her name, but that's a hungry feeder. So she would be okay with 2 tablespoons per quart. Other plants, no. You'd want to lessen it up. You can always add more. You can use it to perk up perennials too. If you have azalea bushes, rhododendrons, perennials that just are not doing what you would like them to do, they used to be better, or else you planted them and they haven't come into their own yet. This is great for that. You just put, we'll say a cup around a perennial this big, put a cup around it, scratch it in. That year it will be better. The next year it's going to be better still. It takes time for it to work through with perennials. And you can make tea for your plants. So this was what I was thinking about. It was out of place, kind of, because here is the little striped cucumber beetles, and here I am making tea. And there I had used a paint strainer bag, and there you go, putting it in the sprayer, spraying it, spray it underneath, and mind you, look at what I'm doing. I'm out there in bare feet, no gloves on. I don't have to worry about chemicals. Try to get it underneath the leaves too. There's a picture of my old house, the flowers. Oh, Julia, yeah. That was so pretty. That's just a beautiful tree in bloom. I loved it every year. There's another picture of the house. Look at that. Look at that. That was all grown in the garden. Look how beautiful that is. No, I don't always mulch with hay. I did that year. What happened, though, is if you get bad hay or straw, the straw, you want to make sure it's from New York State, but then again, there's so many weeds in it. If you get bad stuff, it's so many weeds. I have compost at my house because I make it, so I'll mulch with that. I like to lay down cardboard, actually, big sheets of cardboard to keep down weeds. And another thing is, they say that light raking helps to get oxygen to the roots. So just very light. You don't want to hurt the roots. So because I mulched some of my plants with some hay that we had around, taken off this spring, and it had so many seeds in it. I'm thinking, why did I do this? Because you try to keep the weeds out, and then you bring weeds in. It's crazy. I would mulch as soon as they're not going to get buried by the mulch. No, right. Well, yeah, they do grow sideways. So that is the end of that part. Do you have any questions before we? Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Mhm. Yep. Mhm. Yeah. I just let it dry out. Yeah, I just walk. Now you might have to put some mulch or something on it so it doesn't blow away. It does. Yes. It and I've had that happen. I've had where it blows around. Um so nice big sheets are better. It's hard to find big sheets, and then if you're going in between the rows you can't have big sheets anyway. And the other thing is it's not that pretty. It's functional, but it's okay. Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah. Right? Oh, okay. Mhm. Well, and it's very hard. We were talking before you came in about what goes into my compost, and the corn that pigs eat has is GMO, and to eliminate everything is really, really hard. And I've had people who have wanted ask me where they can get compost that is more organic, because the stuff that comes that they sweep up the leaves and stuff can have chemicals in it, and yeah, so but you can only get it to that certain part, and I don't know. I guess if everything that went into it came from my farm, I could control it. But anyway, I'm not at that. Another thing is, that when you put the cardboard down, if you like the stuff from okra, or if you have a source of compost that's not, and you could just put a small layer of that on top, it would hold down the cardboard, and it will look very, very nice in your garden. Your gardens would look beautiful. You can use black plastic if you want to. I don't, but you can. You certainly can. Yeah, you definitely can. For me, I have to go out and buy it, and so that's that. Any other questions, or do you want to move on to the worm bins and talk about them a little bit? Okay, worm bins, worm bins. I brought a worm bin. You all have a handout on how I recommend. Whoops. Get back. You're not supposed to be there. Okay, you all have a handout on worm bins and how I recommend to do them. And this is a normal worm bin. Technically, you should have your worm bin in a dark container. A plastic tub works good. A plastic tub this size but higher and a darker color would be absolutely perfect. Do any of you have worm bins? Have you ever tried? Have you ever wanted to try? Okay. Yeah. So you just to start, you're going to want to get your bedding ready. There's a great book by Mary Applehoff, Worms Eat My Garbage, or Ate My Garbage. She has died a few years ago, but in it she says, you take shredded paper and you soak it, and then you take it out and let it drain. Worms are 70 to 80% water, so it needs to be moister than you think it should be. You put in some shredded paper. I love dead leaves, old dead leaves. They're great. When you bring dead leaves in, you're bringing other bugs in, though. So a normal worm bin will have bugs in it. The only bugs that are bad for worms are centipedes. They eat, I think it's Mary Applehoff. They eat the cocoons, and the bigger ants will eat the cocoons. But other than that, the other bugs are normal. So if you don't mind the bugs, the issue of fruit flies, because a lot of times people might have a problem with fruit flies. You want to bury your food. You always bury your food under the bedding. We can turn on the light if you want to. You want to bury the food under the bedding, and one thing you can do is you take your food, your vegetable scraps, you can freeze them. So a banana peel, when you bring a banana peel home, it could have fruit fly larvae on it that you're not seeing. You put it in your bin, before you know it, you got fruit flies. If you take that banana peel and throw it in the freezer and freeze it, it's going to kill the larvae, and then you can put it back in the bin. A nice thing about that is it also starts to break down the banana peel, because the worms don't really eat the food until after the microorganisms have started to decay it. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. A pound of worms at optimum, a pound of worms will eat more like a third a pound of food a day. You'll see places where they say it's more. It's really not. They would have to be like super worms. No, it's not a lot. But I know, this guy here, I met him. He is actually a chemist. So he was giving a talk on the chemistry side of compost, which was interesting. And this is his worm bin. And he lives in Maine, and he keeps it outside all year long. So in the winter, he built this little thing to go around it, and he insulates it with, it looks like straw, but you could insulate it with dried leaves. And he says that his worms do fine. He feeds them all winter. He's had it for years. It's the nicest bin in the world. There's another man that made something like this, and you used hardware cloth. And according to this, that man, the worms will actually take their worm poop and push it to the outside because they don't want it with them. So you wouldn't have to clean. You wouldn't have to separate the bedding ever. So that is something I definitely need to do, and I always say this, but yeah? He's got a lot, and he's been doing it for years. I do sell them, and you can buy them online too. Right, you could just email me right now. I'm kind of building up my stock from the winter. I have sold some this spring, but I'd like them to get a little bit hardier so they can start eating and produce the vermicompost for me. Yeah. And dried paper. And right, it's got to be shredded. You can. Oh no, more than that. Okay, so if you know what you can do is take a bucket. Okay, so your cleaning bucket at home, I think it's like 2 gallons. Shred your paper, fill up the bucket with the paper, pack it down, and then add the water. And it's going to go really, really far down, and then you're going to let that water drain out. But that would be a good amount to put in your worm bin. I think myself that the worms need more than just paper, because the paper gets kind of thick when it's wet, you know? So it's better to have like the leaves, the old leaves in it. You can put in peat moss. You can, if you know, you can put in a handful of soil. The worms have gizzards like chicken, so they need grit. It's chopped ground eggshells are great for it. Yeah, it adds to your it adds calcium, and it also gives the little worms grit for their tummies, and they like it. Yeah, you definitely can eliminate. Yeah. Newspaper, they say not to use glossy colored paper, so those brochures, you know, you're going to have to throw them in the garbage, not shred them up. Right, something. They say that the ink is all soy-based, but then again they say do not use, don't use glossy paper, so for whatever reason. I wouldn't use the funnies. You know, you can use colored newspaper because they say it's soy-based, but then if there's a lot of color, it's one of those things, why do it? Why push? There's enough newspaper that doesn't have a lot of color on it. You know, egg cartons, paper egg cartons, those are great. They break down. Another thing that worms like is cardboard. Get some cardboard, and you know the corrugated cardboard? Shred it up into little pieces, just tear it up. Well, the worms love it because cardboard has glue in it, and glue has protein. The other thing is, those worms, they crawl up into the little holes. So if you think you're making this playground for worms, you know? No, it won't look like that. After 4 to 6 months, you're going to keep adding food on the bottom, on the bottom, and the worms are going to keep eating it, and so you're putting bedding on top. So the stuff on the bottom is going to go, like, you know, from nothing to like so high. Say it's May, November, you could try to separate it out if your worms are really doing well. And my favorite way to separate it is you lay down a big sheet of plastic, you put a bright light over it, build a pyramid. If you're outside, the sun works even better. You build a pyramid, the worms crawl away from the light, you pull away the bedding and the vermicompost, and the worms just keep crawling away, and pretty soon you got this little pile that's a little bit of the bedding still in the worms. The stuff that you've taken away, you can use that in your gardens or on your plants. If you want, you can make a screener, and the way I recommend doing that is you take a bin like this and you cut out the bottom, but you leave a lip on it this big, and you buy some hardware cloth that's about 1/4 inch. You take duct tape and you tape it down, and then you just put the stuff you've pulled away, you put it in there, and you shake it, so it'll kind of screen it out. The big stuff you can put back in the worm bed. You do, but you don't have to. To make it look like what mine is, you would have to, but you don't have to. It's perfectly fine. That bedding, everything that the worm has come in contact with gets some of its properties on it. So that stuff is definitely useful. You can just take it and add it to your potting soil or whatever. The only thing is, you may not want to put it on top of your house plants. That's not going to look that pretty. But other than that, it wouldn't be real good if it's chunky. It wouldn't be real good just for your seed starting mixes because you don't want a chunk of stuff over your seed for that. But if you made sure there were no chunks over it, you could use it for seed starting too. Mhm. Yeah. Right, and it's not like the stuff you buy because they have these big grinders and screeners and right. Yeah. 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 Yep. Yeah. Yep. Mhm. Yep. And yep, the fresh bedding and the worms over on the other side. Yes, I have heard people do that, and I haven't had luck at it, but you might. I mean, some people do. Another thing you can do is you get more than one bin. You stack them on top, you cut holes, so you have your bottom bin, and then you cut holes in the bin that you're putting on top, and as the bedding rises, the worms will crawl up into the next level. So you might have to put a little piece of 2x4s, 2x4s to support it so that it's high enough up on the ground off of the other bedding. That's another thing you can do. Yeah? Good. I am going to think about doing them. Yeah, give me ideas. Tell me what you want to learn about. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for coming in. Call me if you have any questions, okay? Thank you. Okay, so that's the worm bin part. Anything else that you want to talk about? Mhm. Oh, okay. You can, like I said to Rachel, right now my stock is okay. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to, yeah. Okay. Mhm. There you go. I'm Tina. I'm, oh, yes, I have it in my car. Wonderful. That's that's the worm farm, huh? Is that the worm that wears the top hat? No. Okay. Yes. Good. Okay. 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 that sounds good. Nice. Yes, I'm outside of Cazenovia, towards Morrisville, and this is the farm. That's a little